Good morning. I would like to introduce to you one of our pre-K 3, pre-K 4 classrooms with teachers Miss Steinmetz and Miss Ventura.
Welcome, welcome. Bienvenidos, welcome, welcome. Bienvenidos, welcome, welcome. We're so glad to see you, hola amigos. Bienvenidos. Welcome to Powell.
Of course, that's the highlight of the morning. Again, welcome to Powell Bilingual Elementary School. Bienvenidos a la Escuela Bilingüe de Powell. I am Okia Lyons Lucas, the principal here at Powell Bilingual Elementary School, located here in Washington, D.C., and we are a dual language elementary school in which instruction is conducted in both English and in Spanish. Powell Elementary School was one of the two schools that piloted the Tools of the Mind curriculum at DC Public Schools in the school year of 2010-2011. And now the curriculum has expanded across most of DC Public Schools. And on top of implementing this great curriculum, we at Powell also had to figure out how to envision and deliver the curriculum in two different languages, again, being dual language in both English and in Spanish. Thanks to our curriculum, the hard work of the great instructors here at Powell, DC Public Schools' approach to early education, and our partnerships, we see strong success in all of our early childhood education classrooms. In the school year of 2014-15, one of our greatest highlights is that 95% of the early education students met or exceeded the expectations on social, emotional, physical, language, cognitive, literacy, and mathematics expectations. But these outcomes are not the only things that we use to measure our success or the progress that we see here. We also conduct home visits that go beyond our Head Start program, but also with partnerships such as Flamboyant Foundation. Building parent engagement, especially in our younger grades, sets our students up for success in education beyond just here at Powell. We build on our learners' natural curiosity with unique partnerships, such as our partnerships with the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum for our STEM Inquiry Pre-K project. DC Public Schools has really taken a strong approach to early education, and I am proud of the work that we have done here at Powell Bilingual. And now, I am honored to recognize two strong friends of DC Public Schools, Valerie Jarrett, Senior Advisor to the President, and Roberto Rodriguez, Deputy Assistant to the President for Education. At this time, I'm excited to introduce Mr. Roberto Rodriguez, who will share with us the work that the White House has been doing to ensure that all children have access to early education. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's a real honor for me to be here with you as we celebrate today the one-year anniversary of the White House Summit on Early Learning. And I want to thank Principal Lyons Lucas for having us here today at Powell and congratulate you on the success in expanding early childhood education here at the school. I had the distinct pleasure of shadowing a pre-K program here just a couple of years ago, and I can say it is the highlight of our day to be able to spend time with our youngest learners. And I also want to congratulate the District of Columbia on its great strides to expand early childhood education across the district. Let's give the whole district a round of applause. So we're here to mark the anniversary of the White House Summit on Early Learning, and just about a year ago today, we welcomed stakeholders from around the country, early childhood educators, business leaders, philanthropists, policymakers, community leaders, state and local leaders, to really rally around the importance of high-quality early childhood education. That was a day to celebrate and mark an over $1 billion investment in expanding the reach of high-quality early learning programs for our youngest learners. And it's my privilege to be with you this morning and to have the distinct honor of welcoming to the podium and introducing Valerie Jarrett, who has been a champion for children across her career and has brought that fight to expand access to high-quality early childhood education from Chicago all the way here to the district and now across the country on behalf of the President. I think no one appreciates and understands the importance of early learning more in our administration, and we thank you deeply, Valerie, for your leadership on this work. And please join me in welcoming our Senior Advisor to President Obama, Valerie Jarrett.
Thank you, Roberto. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. What a beautiful school. Is it not, with the sun shining in? What a better way than to celebrate this important anniversary. To Principals Lyons Lucas, to the Principal Lyon Lucas, thank you for your leadership. She shared with me that she's really only been here 6 months, and what a better school to have to launch this important initiative that you've done. And we want to welcome you to this community. I know that you've dedicated your career to taking care of the youngest of us, and I'm so delighted that you have your own school now. So congratulations to Principal Lyons Lucas. Please, round of applause for you. And, of course, to your whole team and the little darlings who welcomed us here. I wish everywhere I went we'd have wonderful little preschoolers giving us a welcome like that. To Chris Perry, who you'll be hearing from shortly, and the Invest in the U.S. team, thank you for organizing this event. And, of course, I'm delighted to be here with our new Secretary of Education, John King, who you'll be hearing from shortly as well. Give him a round of applause. Someone else who has dedicated his career to helping ensure that every young child has an opportunity for the education they deserve. So thank you, John, for your leadership. So we're here today for 2 reasons. 1, we want to celebrate the progress that we've made together. And 2, we want to challenge ourselves, of course, to do more. So I'll begin on a personal note. My mom has devoted over 60 years to the field of early childhood education. I see a few of you nodding, so you might know who she is. Her name is Barbara Bowman, and she founded Erickson Institute in 1966, which is a graduate school in early childhood education. And at that time, if you can believe it, people didn't actually recognize early childhood education as a professional field. And so she and her co-founders started down this journey that continues to this day. At the age of 87, she still teaches full-time. She's had 2 tenures as president of Erickson Institute. She ran the early childhood education program for Arne Duncan when he was superintendent of schools in Chicago. And the first 6 months of the Obama administration, she commuted to Washington and ran the early childhood program here. So as you can imagine, early childhood education has been in my blood literally since day 1. And somebody told my mother that I was coming here to do this. So she called me and she said, "How could you be doing an event on early childhood education? You didn't invite me." I'm like, "Mom, you live in Chicago. This is D.C. She said, "You don't understand. My reach is everywhere. That's how I heard you were doing these remarks." So in absentia, she sends you her greetings and congratulations as well. Beginning when President Obama was first elected to the Illinois State Senate, my mom started bending his ear. talking about how critical it is to invest in early childhood education. And so I am both professionally and personally delighted that early childhood education has been a top priority of the president since he was elected. After the president's re-election in 2012, he led in his State of the Union, and preparing for the State of the Union, he gathered a group of his senior advisors and he said, I want you to let me know what you think is the one thing that we could do that would be most impactful for early childhood education. You'll remember this, Roberto. And so we came back to him with a series of options, and at his State of the Union, he called on Congress to ensure funding so that every young child had the opportunity for quality, affordable, early childhood education. Now, it may not surprise you that Congress did not act, since they have had a hard time acting on just about everything. But we didn't stop there, which is why, as Roberto mentioned, we hosted the first ever summit at the White House a year ago to focus on how we could pull together private sector investments focused on early childhood education. And several of you who are here today have been involved in the philanthropy focused on early childhood education for years. You were there with us last year, and we appreciate your leadership and your presence here with us today. Over $330 million in new actions from corporate and philanthropic leaders to expand the reach and enhance the quality of early education for thousands of additional children was announced at that time, and PBS and Marriott, who are also here today, are part of that effort. Up to $750 million new dollars in federal grants awarded by Secretary Duncan and Burrell to support early learning for over 63,000 additional children across the country. These investments will expand high-quality early learning and grow the supply of early care and education for infants and toddlers beginning next year. The Batum Foundation was among the philanthropies that made commitments for funds slated to be spent right here in D.C., and I know that you're here today with us as well, and we appreciate your investment. D.C. has been absolutely on the forefront of the movement for early childhood education, and the D.C. schools deserve an enormous amount of praise for making this a priority here at home in D.C. And you're going to hear later in the program about the extraordinary work that's going on here to provide universal access for pre-K. And D.C. Is leading the way. Cities and states around the country are stepping up and understanding how important it is to invest in early learning. Since the President called for pre-K for all children in his State of the Union, more than 30 states around the country have taken action. And this fall, Secretary Duncan announced $237 million in funding for 18 states, which will receive second-year awards for the preschool development grant funds to be continued so that they can continue their work to expand early learning. All important resources. And there is more good news. The Every Student Succeeds Act that the President signed just last week includes a program to expand or establish state-supported high-quality early learning grants, building on the Preschool Development Grant Program. Meanwhile, Invest in U.S. has continued to press for more children to have this very important access to early learning. And we've been holding webinars and filming PSAs and engaging with stakeholders all across the country. They have done just tremendous work. But we want to keep leading, and we want everybody to get involved and engaged. We know, as you know, that every dollar that we invest in early learning saves us $7 down the line. I just spoke earlier this morning at a national reentry conference for those who've been incarcerated, and 1,500 people gathered from around the country to focus on what we could do to help people reenter society after they've been incarcerated, give them that second chance that they've earned. We spend $80 billion in this country on mass incarceration. We have 5% of the world's population, yet we incarcerate 25% of the world's prisoners. $80 billion. What if we took that $80 billion and we spent it on early learning? We know the outcomes for our people would be far greater. So I want to challenge you to remember, as I know you know, how high the stakes are for our young people. In cities and just like D.C. all across our country, every child wakes up with that glint in his eye or her eye and a curiosity to learn. And as I often say, talent is ubiquitous, opportunity is not. And what we're doing here today and what we do throughout the course of the year creates that opportunity, that level playing field, so every child can achieve his or her dreams. And that's a pretty cool calling, if you ask me. So in closing, on behalf of the President, I thank you for what you do each and every day, and I challenge you to see what more we can do to expand those opportunities. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for those remarks and for your leadership on this really important issue. It's now my privilege to introduce Dr. John King, who serves at the U.S. Department of Education as Senior Advisor, delegated the duties of the Deputy Secretary. And as Valerie mentioned, we are thrilled that President Obama has announced he will be soon serving as Acting Secretary of Education. John is a champion for change, for support, and for innovation across our public education system. He has been a champion across his career in the state of New York as well as in the city of New York. We are so thrilled to have him as a champion in our administration, continuing to lead this important work forward. Please join me in welcoming Dr. John King.
Thank you, Roberto, for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be able to follow Valerie. Actually, one of the first trips that I took when I joined the department was with Valerie's mom to visit early learning classrooms in Chicago, and I learned a tremendous amount on that trip. This is a great event. It is rare, unfortunately, too rare, that you have an issue that brings together a bipartisan coalition. Rare that you have issues that actually mobilize the business community, the philanthropic community, the education community, and the political community all around a common vision of the future of our country. And that's really what early learning is. It is about investing in our future. And we have tremendous partners in the room. Catherine Bradley, who's been an extraordinary leader in this city and in this country, whose City Bridge Foundation has invested over $8 million in the early years component of a broader effort to really challenge multi-generational poverty. We're fortunate to have folks from the Flamboyant Foundation here with us who are doing extraordinary work training teachers to do, preschool teachers to do home visits with families and to engage families early on in their kids' education, ensure that kids are in school each day and getting the support at home that's critical to their success in the classroom. We're privileged to have a group of foundation and philanthropic partners, the Marriott Foundation, the Batum Foundation, the Wolf Trap Foundation, and of course PBS, all critical partners in this effort to expand access to quality early learning. We also are fortunate to have a great partner in the First 5 Years Fund and Chris Perry, and we're excited about the momentum that early learning has. Just today, we learned that in the budget agreement that Congress reached with the President, we see continued investment in the preschool development grants program that Valerie described. So we're going to see 18 states continuing to work towards over 30,000 new slots in early learning. That builds on the $1 billion investment through the Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge, which is helping states better integrate their early learning system with their K-12 system, helping states focus on quality. And we know quality is critical. There's a 7-to-1, 8-to-1 return on investment for every dollar invested in early learning. But to make that happen, we have to make sure that it's high quality, that teachers are well prepared and well supported, that we're focused on students' academic skills, but also their socio-emotional skills. We know that we're building a foundation for healthy lives in early learning. And so there's important work that we will continue to do over the next 13 months to support implementation of that preschool development grants program. It's also a pleasure to be here at Powell under Principal Lyon's leadership, because we are in a building that honors kids' language, honors language diversity, sees the fact that students may speak a different language at home as an asset, not a liability, and sees the opportunity in developing students as future bilingual adults who will be able to navigate language and culture as adults in the 21st century economy. It is also important that we're in a school that pays attention to serving students with disabilities well. It's critical that we think about early learning as an entry point towards an inclusive learning experience for our students with disabilities. And so there's tremendous joy in this room, I think, because we see here what is possible when we work together as a country to improve early learning and to improve our future. We also know that through the Invest in Us initiative, we've got over $300 million that is going to support the expansion of quality early learning across the country and allow us to leverage the provisions of the new Every Student Succeeds Act to drive expanded opportunity for early learning. So I'm going to close with this thought about history. I was a high school social studies teacher, so I can't resist. Anytime people are gathered in a room, a high school social studies teacher knows an opportunity to put things in historical context. Standing with the president last week at the signing of the Every Student Succeeds Act was a historic moment in the continuation of a civil rights tradition. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act, now reauthorized, was first adopted in 1965. We have to think about that law in the context of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The intention of that law was to expand equality of opportunity. President Johnson, himself a former teacher, signed that law in front of the one-room schoolhouse he had attended in Texas. Standing next to him was his teacher from that one-room schoolhouse in Texas. And he said of that law, it was the most important piece of legislation he thought he would sign as president. And he believed that because he saw education as the path to opportunity, education as the way that we would deliver on America's promise of equality of opportunity. And early learning is an extension of that civil rights tradition. It is about ensuring that every student has access to the full range of opportunity. It is about ensuring that our students have the opportunity to thrive at the youngest ages so that they are prepared to build a better future for our country. So it's great to be here with all of you to celebrate this event. DC is a real leader nationally in this work. DC is a place that has invested early, often, and wisely in early learning. It's my pleasure to introduce Brian Pick, who is the Chief of Teaching and Learning for the DC Public Schools. Together with Chancellor Kaya Henderson, he and the leadership team at DC in the DC Public Schools are making opportunity possible in places like Powell. Brian.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Powell, welcome to DC Public Schools, welcome to DC. Thank you, John, for the introduction and for your words. Congratulations on your appointment. We look forward to working with you in the department. Welcome to Powell. For those of you that do not know, President Obama, visited President Obama visited Powell about a year and a half ago. And during that visit was snapped one of my favorite pictures from his administration. If you're not aware of it, I encourage you to Google President Obama and stethoscope, because he allowed a young three-year-old to listen to his heart in a classroom here. And it was a heartwarming and truly wonderful photo of his dedication to our youngest students and their potential. You know, it's extraordinary how much the first 5 years of a student's or a child's life really matters in the next 80. And here at DC Public Schools, we know that early childhood education is an important strategy for eliminating the income achievement gap and providing for fostering equity and opportunity for all of our students. DC, Washington, D.C., the city, is the #1 in the country when it comes to universal access for our youngest students. In fact, we have over 86% of our 3- and 4-year-olds in high-quality, full-day educational programming. Washington, D.C. is #1 in the country with respect to early education funding per child. I think it's important to note that our early educators are selected, celebrated, supported, and compensated in the same way that our K-12 educators are. And Washington, D.C. Public Schools meets all 10 early childhood quality standards as identified by the National Institute of early education research. It's taken political, it's taken cross-sector and community engagement and investment. We have a blended funding model that uses federal and local dollars for a school-wide model that provides wraparound family services and intense instructional supports for all students in all Title I schools. That means families and their students receive mental health supports, health, dental, vision, wellness, developmental screenings. We have parent workshops, teacher home visits. We have a research-based curriculum that you heard about this morning from Principal Lyons in every classroom. And our teachers receive instructional coaching and instructional support to deliver the promise of that curricular experience. As a result of all these intense efforts and investments, DC Public Schools is higher than the national average on early childhood quality ratings, and our children are excelling. We are starting early, we are starting strong, we are DCPS, and we are rising. Thank you very much. In conclusion, I'd like to thank Invest in Us, our guests today from the White House and the department. It is my honor to introduce Catherine Bradley. She's president of the City Bridge Foundation. She's a fierce advocate for all students in DC, including our most youngest and vulnerable. Thank you, Catherine.
Hi, everyone. It's fantastic to be here with some of my most treasured colleagues in this work. We've already said goodbye to a few of our wonderful federal government leaders, but I see in the room here not just Flamboyant Foundation, Jack McCarthy of Apple Tree Early Learning, and then, of course, the two wonderful colleagues who stepped forward a year ago with such significant commitments at the President's Summit, Ann Gunsteins of Marriott and Rosita Green of Batum Family Foundation. So I have to just double-click on what Brian just told you because it is nothing short of extraordinary what the community of teachers and leaders and practitioners here in DC have accomplished. So the numbers last year for the whole city are, and I'm going to look down to get this right, that we had 61% of 3-year-olds in early childhood settings. And this is so extraordinary. 93% of 4-year-olds had access in Washington, D.C. It is nothing short of a miracle. It represents so much hard work, and I've been really proud to be a small part of it. So my entry point into this work that I do today was when City Bridge made a series of investments now almost a decade ago called the Early Years Education Initiative. And it was structured as a private-public partnership to bring best-in-class practitioners and people into this space. See Bibi Otero, too. I should have mentioned you as well, my early role model. If Valerie were still here, I would look at her and say, you know, Valerie, I actually knew who your mom was well before I knew who you were. The work we did put me in touch with some of the most extraordinary people still doing this work in Washington. One of them was the KIPP School. I just want to close with a quick story of 2 photographs on the wall of my office in Washington, D.C. One is a picture of my family with a 4-year-old, a wonderful 4-year-old named Jay Ron, greeting him in a church basement in Anacostia, the site of KIPP's first early childhood school in Washington. Now here we are, 8 years later. KIPP has 5 early childhood schools here in Washington, D.C. And there's a second photograph of Jay Ron with his twin brother at the KIPP Middle School Key Academy, the 2 of them thriving and well on their way to graduation and to college. And I pause on those 2 photographs for really 2 reasons. One, to remind all of us that the arc of this work is long. When we invest in young children, we're all committing to staying with them for a very long trajectory. Those early investments pay off, and they pay off wonderfully, and that's my second thought here, that Washington, D.C. is already seeing the fruit of these investments. Those first cohorts of very young children whom the city invested in as 3-year-olds and as 4-year-olds are now in middle school and well on their way in life. So, congratulations, D.C. And it is now my privilege to introduce Chris Perry, the wonderful executive director of the First 5 Years Fund, and the panel she will lead.
Thank you, Catherine, and thanks for the incredible work you do in early learning. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today, and I'm especially delighted to introduce our distinguished panelists. And let me tell you why. At the First 5 Years Fund, we advocate for a greater federal investment in high-quality early childhood education from birth to 5. Last year, we launched the Invest in Us White House Summit on Early Education, and that issued the challenge that others have described to you for public, private, business leaders, philanthropists, advocates, elected officials, and individuals to build a better nation by expanding high-quality early childhood education programs for children birth to 5. Invest in Us recognizes that government cannot do this alone and should not be the sole source to make sure that each child has the early learning resources they need to succeed in life. We know that quality early childhood development requires not only an engaged parent, but an engaged community, one that supports young families in many different ways and makes every waking moment a learning moment. And our message is pretty simple. When we invest in them, we invest in us. The response to this call to action was overwhelming in its generosity and variety. In this first year, Invest in Us garnered nearly $350 million in funded funds pledged to a variety of programs and initiatives across the nation. Businesses, philanthropies, and local governments stepped up to the plate, identified gaps, and put great time and energy into developing solutions. Just a year later, we see this progress in cities and communities all across the nation. Today, we are highlighting and celebrating the progress made here in our nation's capital through this unique public-private partnership known as Invest in Us. Washington is often called the most powerful city in the world and is often seen from the outside as a place that doesn't reflect real America. Not true. Washington's neighborhoods reflect a changing America with all its struggles, great wealth and crushing poverty, diversity and division, great promise and significant barriers. But most importantly, people working together to make sure the American dream remains within reach for each new generation. And that's the great value of Invest in Us. It delivers more than much needed funding, and I certainly don't want to diminish the need for more funding. But Invest in Us also provides the priceless combination of vision, expertise, collaboration, and results. That's exactly what we hope to illustrate in our panel discussion today. We have a diverse group here, and I'd like to quickly introduce all of them and then give each of them a chance to say a few words before we get into our discussion. Leslie Rotenberg, General Manager of Children's Media for PBS. Arvin Minocha, President and CEO of Wolf Trap Foundation for the Performing Arts. Rosita Green, Chief Strategy Officer, Batum Family Foundation. Ann Gunsteins, Executive Director of the Marriott Foundation, and Dr. Matthew Beal, Division Chief, Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital. I should also acknowledge that here with us in the audience is Dr. Beal's counterpart, Dr. Lee Beers. You'll see that their combined Invest in Us commitments, like those all over the country, are doing something that is so critical for young children. Forming a community that supports their early development and learning and ultimately their later success in school and life. So now, let's hear from each of our panelists about some of the great work they're doing. Leslie, tell us about PBS and what you've been up to.
Well, I came to PBS because, like many of you in this room, I'm a mom with 2 kids. At the time I came to PBS, they were 2 and 5. And I was really drawn to the mission of PBS, which is to use the power of media to open worlds of possibilities for all children. And at PBS, we're meeting a critical need for children, especially those who are living in poverty. So a year ago at the White House Summit for Early Education, we made a commitment that was in partnership with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPB, and together we made a commitment to produce quality, high-quality, early learning media for children, tools for parents, tools for teachers, that would reach all children, and that total commitment was $58 million. Now, none of this would be possible without the Department of Education, and I'm fortunate to be here today with many colleagues from the Department of Education who provided the seed funding and continue to provide seed funding through the Ready to Learn initiative that makes all of this possible. It's also possible thanks, again, to our partnership with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I believe my colleague, Deb Sanchez, is in the room, and we work together to make all of these activities possible. So I'll just give you a very quick overview of what we have done in terms of this commitment and what we've achieved. The 3 key things that I want to highlight are national media content that reaches children via television and via all kinds of digital platforms, research that shows the effectiveness of that media, and then local community outreach through PBS stations and their partners in communities. So the exciting media that we created with this funding were 2 new series. Many of you may be familiar with them if you have young children in the house. One is called Peg Plus Cat, and the other one is called Odd Squad. And just to give you an idea of our reach, PBS Kids reaches more than 70% of all children 2 to 8 in the United States on television. We also reach about 11 million kids every month on our digital platforms. Just to put that in context, we are the #1 kids TV network for reaching kids 2 to 5. Parents with kids under 6, and children who live in low-income families. So with that extraordinary reach, we are able to create media properties like Peg Plus Cat, and very briefly, this is a program that features a very spirited young girl. She's about the same age as our preschool audience, and her sidekick, Cat. And in every episode, they have problems to solve. So like many of us, they encounter big problems, and then they encounter really big problems. And they have to use math skills to solve them. And because Peg is just an ordinary girl, sometimes she totally freaks out, but then she overcomes her obstacles and models resiliency for kids. And then there's the Odd Squad. And the Odd Squad is a group of kids who are like the kids who watch the show, about 5 to 8 years old. They work in a special agency where they're called in to solve problems in town when anything weird happens. And the way that they solve those problems is by working together, so they're modeling collaboration and also, again, using math skills. So we're really demonstrating how math can be practical in life. And if you're like me, you've spent a lot of time telling your children why in the world they need to learn the things that they're learning at school and what that has to do with real life. And part of our goal is really modeling that for kids. So we created this content, and then we did a lot of research really proving how effective it could be in helping kids develop these skills. We also developed a number of parent resources, including 2 apps. One of them is called PBS Parents Play and Learn. Like this school, it's bilingual, and it's been downloaded 2 million times. And it helps parents really support their children's learning with games that they can play together online as well as offline. Hands-on games that they can play when they find themselves in the grocery store, on the bus, in the laundromat. There's another app called Pbs Kids Supervision, and this is really a breakthrough app because on parents' mobile phones, they get information about what shows their kids watch and what games they're playing and how that content is helping their kids learn, and then gives them activities that they can do at home, hands-on activities to support that learning. We also provide teacher resources working with the Boston University School of Education. And all of this is supported by research. And that research really demonstrates that the content has been incredibly effective in helping close the achievement gap. The most effective with children who come from low-income families and have the greatest gains in areas like math and literacy, as well as critical thinking skills. For example, new research from WestEd demonstrates that PBS Kids content helps narrow the math achievement gap for kids from low-income families and better prepares them for success in kindergarten. After engaging with the content, kids made statistically significant gains on standardized math tests. And also very interesting, their parents made gains. The parents had a better understanding of how their children learn. They were all kind of surprised to see what their children were capable of doing when it came to math, and then the simple things they could do at home that would make math learning fun. And finally, I want to mention our local stations. There are 82 PBS stations working with partners in their communities, hands-on, to help support learning and providing PBS Kids content to low-income families through a variety of projects. One example is a series of Odd Squad camps that took place this summer. We've been really focused on the summer learning loss, which is particularly significant when it comes to math. And so these camps took place over the summer, and there were 20 stations who partnered in the camps, including WHUT, which is a service of Howard University here in Washington. They partnered with the DC Public Library and hosted camps at the Anacostia Neighborhood Library. Jeffrey Lee, the CEO of WHUT, is here and can answer questions about that. And once again, research showed gains in math skills from the beginning to the end of the camp, and showed children's increased comfort with and attitudes about math, which are incredibly important. So I'll end there and just say that we're looking forward to the next 5 years when our commitment doesn't end, it grows, and we're going to be focusing on developing the same kinds of content and tools, digital learning tools for children, parents, and teachers, this time focusing on science and literacy.
Thanks, Leslie. Before we hear from Arvin, though, I want to note that the Wolf Trap Foundation commitment is our newest Invest in Us commitment. We are really excited to hear more about it. So, Arvin?
Thanks very much. We do everything Leslie does, except we do it through performance-based teaching artists, but we all share, obviously, a similar commitment to helping children at the earliest stages. And, you know, with Wolf Trap's approach, we are a performance-based institution. We are a performing arts organization. Many of you, I'm sure, know Wolf Trap primarily from our summer season at the Feline Center in the nation's only national park for the performing arts. But Wolf Trap was founded very much with the idea of not only celebrating the arts through performance, but cultivating the next generation using the arts. So our approach is to take performance-based strategies and incorporate them into classrooms or into learning experiences, learning environments, to help children with whatever curricular goal or academic goal they might have in front of them. Basically integrating music, dance, theater, to give teachers and caregivers another tool in their toolkit, another way to reach children, another way to introduce concepts that they need to know in order to be successful in kindergarten and first grade as they move up the ladder. We've been doing this work since 1981, where we were approached by Head Start to create the Wolf Trap Institute for Early Learning. We continue to partner with Head Start and many other agencies and institutions around the country. We do our work really throughout our nation. Our model is really primarily teacher training and professional development. We want the concepts to be spread and then used over many years to have an exponential effect. We do a lot of work, of course, here in the DC area. We affect 10,000 children, teachers, and caregivers on an annual basis. We have also scaled our work, and we've done that for over 30 years. We have teacher training and professional development workshops in every state in the country. And what we're excited about in particular as we think about growth for the next 5 years is expanding our affiliate network. And our affiliate network are 16 cities around the country that have replicated the Wolf Trap model in their communities in year-round school programs. So there's a Wolf Trap Nevada, there's a new Wolf Trap Detroit, there's a Wolf Trap in Florida, where they use the Wolf Trap methodology to help kids become their best, really, by using the performing arts. We affect, through the affiliate network, over 60,000 children and caregivers and teachers throughout the nation, and we are planning on growing that network over the next few years. As I said, our model is really to use music and dance to help teach whatever particular curricular goal a teacher may have. We try to support all local and national standards. Ours is a very customizable approach in the sense that we don't have a box that we send out to teachers throughout the country. We work with teachers and administrators to figure out what exactly is the need in the classroom, what is the lesson plan objective. We then pair them with teaching artists who are trained in that particular field and a performance arts field to develop a program that is very customized for that classroom and that teacher. And we believe that that's part of the reason our teachers like to come back to the Wolf Trap program over many, many years, because we're continually creating something new that really affects a particular issue or challenge they might have. That program has been studied throughout our history in many different ways. We have a lot of data to support the value of the performing arts at the earliest stages. We're very proud over the last few years we've been the subject of a Department of Education funded research project that was just released this past year, where it showed over a 4-year period looking at thousands of children in our program that two things, that the Wolf Trap method delivers the highest quality of professional development to teachers. That, of course, is central to our belief because we really want to be in the business of training teachers to have a multiple effect. It also showed that the children who went through our program, and in this case they were studying our math curriculum for pre-K and K, the children who went through the program had demonstrable and statistically significant improvements in their math diagnostic. And in fact, it showed that the kids who went through our program received the equivalent of over 30 extra days of math instruction. So we thought that was a really powerful tool for us, and it's a way that we're going to be, I think, hopefully opening more doors around the country, especially as administrators are, strapped for cash, you're looking for professional development opportunities, you don't have endless amounts of money. We'd like to be able to say, here's a program that has been studied extensively over many years, and we can show with great fidelity that there's a high-quality professional development model at its core. We've also recently announced a very exciting partnership with Turnaround Arts, the program, signature program of the President's Council on Arts and Humanities. I see our partner Megan Byers here with us today. Turnaround is expanding, as you probably all very well know, into the early childhood space. We will be the national partner of Turnaround Arts. We'll be providing early childhood expertise and teacher training across the Turnaround network and working directly in a number of schools around the country, including 4 here in DC Public Schools. So that's a very new program for us and one that we think really exemplifies what we're trying to do, which is to use the arts in as many early childhood classrooms as possible. And for next year, we are committing $1 million of our efforts specifically to Early Childhood Institute work. That is part of a new 5-year expansion plan that we've undertaken, which involves a number of key elements, first and foremost of which is our expansion of our affiliate network. We are hoping to expand by 30% in the next 5 years, a significant deepening of our commitment and work here in the DC metro area, as well as to contribute to and to help sponsor additional research in the arts integration model of early childhood education, where we feel we have, because of our national network, a nice laboratory, so to speak, for that kind of research activity to take place. And we're very excited about the future. This conversation about early childhood education that continues to grow, particularly with our angle on the arts, where we think is a natural fit for young children and learning, I think positions us well. We're excited to be part of a large network and a movement, and very honored to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you. Rosita, tell us a little bit about the Batum Family Foundation commitment.
Sure. So the Batum Family Foundation has a long history of helping children thrive. Started by local businessman Stuart Batum in 1968, the foundation was really founded upon the goal to help children exit poverty by providing educational programming and support. So a year ago, as part of the Invest in Us challenge, the foundation made a commitment of $10 million over 5 years to support early childhood development and programming for infants and toddlers living in Wards 7 and 8 in the District of Columbia. We are very excited about this commitment and know that with our partners, we will be able to see change really happen for our youngest infants and toddlers in the district. As part of this work, we commissioned a report from Child Trends that was released just last week, to help us understand the status of infants and toddlers in the district. And we also wanted to engage in this research so that we could better understand and determine where to make our investments that could really have a great impact on the future of infants and toddlers in Ward 7 and 8, as well as in the community as a whole. So as part of this work, we know that we want to advance 3 particular objectives around practice, policy, and research. In the area of practice, what we want to do is build the capacity of community-based early childhood providers to be able to deliver high-quality infant and toddler care. We also want to make sure that we expand the availability of community-based supports for infants and toddlers in the areas of home visiting and mental health supports. We want to make sure as well that we do not forget that any solutions that we come up with have to be sustainable solutions. And to that end, we are also focused on policy as an area where we can really help shape a policy that would include expanding and increasing funding support for infant and toddler care in the District of Columbia. And then finally, we will focus on research. We want to make sure that we continue to support research that identifies innovations in early childhood and learning. We want to understand how we can scale those solutions. And then we also want to understand how we can document and learn from those results. So as part of moving this body of work forward, I am very excited to announce to all of you today that we have actually established a Birth to 3 policy alliance for the district. Now we know that we can't do this work alone, so we are excited that we have a number of outstanding partners, some of them are with us today, that are going to be working with us across the city to really look at how we can improve the quality of care for infants and toddlers in the district, as well as expand and work towards a dedicated funding source for infants and toddlers in the district. So that is exciting news for us today.
Thanks, Rosita. Ann, tell us a little bit about the Marriott Family Foundation.
Good morning, everybody. Marriott Family Foundation, specifically the J. Willard Analysis Marriott Foundation, is a private family foundation. Although I'm located in the offices of Marriott International, we are separate from the company, and it was primarily established with funds from the founder of Marriott International, J. Willard Marriott. So education and opportunity, I would say, has always been at the core of what the Marriott family has tried to accomplish. It's a well-known fact amongst my colleagues at the company, but not many people outside the company know that J. Willard Marriott Sr. was actually a high school dropout. He was a sheep herder in Utah. And it was because a college professor saw great promise in him as a young man, encouraged him to get a GED, helped him get into college, helped him find a job on campus. Eventually, he went on to graduate from university, met and married Alice Marriott, and they made a long trek from Utah to DC to open a 9-seat root beer stand in 1927. And fast forward, 80-some years, there's over 300,000 people across the globe and over 70 countries now where Marriott has hotels. And I keep going back to the fact that for the sake of that one teacher, the impact that they had on this young man's life, and I think the family's never forgotten that. So we are very broadly focused compared to many foundations of our size, but I think it all comes back to that passion for education and opportunity that it provides. Most recently, I've been with the Family Foundation now for about 15 years. We have a very large focus nationally on supporting colleges and universities with hospitality programs for obvious reasons. We want to help the next generation of hotel leaders get a start. We are probably 40 to 50% of our funding stays local. The Marriott family does live here, works here, so we find it very important. We're fairly broad in our funding across the DC, but I would say within the last 5 to 7 years, it's become much more focused on education reform efforts. And I really have to give a shout out to Catherine Bradley in the room and the City Bridge Foundation, because we are rather large financially for a local foundation, but we're very small staffed. So I had to learn very early on how to find the best and brightest people to learn from. and to use as consultants, and certainly City Bridge has been one of those. Michelle Rhee early on and Kaya Henderson have certainly informed our work. I would say that we are very new to the early childhood space, but we couldn't be any more passionate than I think everybody in this room, just because we have educated ourselves over the past 2 years to really understand the importance and the science behind what happens during those first 3 years. The commitment that we made last year at the Invest in US, I have to be honest, we kind of went into it not really knowing what our plans were. It sounds like everybody here was much more specific exactly what they wanted to do, but because we were still in a research mode, we said, well, we'll commit $5 million over 5 years to support early childhood in DC. So again, fairly broad, but I would say this past year, we quickly were able to focus on some areas that we found of great interest, one of which you're going to hear from Matt Beal today is the Early Childhood Innovation Network. So we have already more than committed. We committed $7 million in new grants this year alone, the largest of which is to the Early Childhood Innovation Network with Lee Beers and Matt Beal through Georgetown and Children's Medical Center. So we're very excited that we've already met our commitment and looking to do more. We've also done a significant grant. I think someone said Jack McCarthy's in the room. So I just want to recognize Apple Tree Institute. We were so impressed with them and have made a commitment to help them complete their Every Child Ready curriculum and make sure it's an online portal that can be used nationally, as well as continuing to invest in Fight for Children's program, Joe's Champs, which is preparing school leaders around the district to better support preschool teachers and their programs. So I can't believe we're here today. I really think if it hadn't been for the Invest in US conference that one of my trustees, Dick Marriott, and I attended last year, I think it really got us thinking more broadly than we maybe had been as a foundation. It introduced us to so many experts in the room that we were able to, during the year, convene and really learn from and invite other foundations and members of the community to join us. And I'm really hopeful that what we're going to be doing with the ESA network is going to be something that will be taken nationwide. So we're very excited to be here today and just want to thank everyone.
Great. So last but not least, Dr. Beal, can you tell us a little bit about the Early Childhood Innovation Network and the work you're doing at Georgetown?
Sure. It's a great pleasure to be here with you all this morning. And I can't resist saying, me da mucho placer estar con ustedes esta mañana en esta escuela tan bonita. It's a really special place, and it represents so much of the good things that we're hearing about that are going on in DC education, particularly in early childhood education. And I'm here very much in partnership with my colleague Lee Beers from Children's National. And we've had a really exciting last year in thinking about how we want to think about meaningfully bringing our work to this area. I think Lee and I both very much believe in prevention as physicians. And we very much also believe that there's no health without mental health, and that in schools there's no learning without social emotional health. And so the efforts to really support schools' efforts to support the emotional and social development of our kids is absolutely critical to creating effective learning environments. And then coming at this work from the perspective of being a physician and from the health system is thinking about the unfortunate divide that still so often exists between the health world and the educational world. Even though we're absolutely convinced, based upon our clinical experience and based upon what the scientific evidence shows us, that physical health, mental health, and learning share really, really common roots. They share roots in kids having opportunities to have the foundational support that they need to develop. And those foundational supports include appropriate nurturance and care from the adults in their lives, and a buffering environment from the stress that so many kids in this city experience. There is an enormous amount of good going on in the city for young children, but many of our children are living in environments that are extremely stressed. And school is absolutely an oasis, and can be more of that, but we need to do a better job of bridging the different environments in which early children spend their time. School is one, the health world is another, and in homes and communities. So the impetus behind the Early Childhood Innovation Network is to identify effective, practical, rapidly testable ways to bridge some of those gaps, to work effectively in schools, to work effectively in the health system, particularly in primary care, to work effectively in community-based programs and home-based programs, so as to buffer the impact of stress upon young children and their families, to support children's development. And when we're talking about children's development, we're really talking about brain development, so building better brains in all of our kids, and in supporting the adults in their lives so that they can have the buffering effect that kids really need to have early on. So we're extraordinarily grateful to the Marriott Foundation and particularly to Anne's leadership in supporting our vision for the Early Childhood Innovation Network, which will be a project to do just the work that I described, to identify really promising initiatives, to work with partners, with schools like Powell, with other schools that are doing early childhood education, to test new innovative ideas for how to effectively support kids' brain development, to support their families, and to support the health, mental health, and educational growth of young kids. We think it's absolutely critical for outcomes that all of us care about. So that's the basic thrust of the network, and we're really excited to have a chance to begin.
Very exciting. I am impressed by the depth and breadth of everything that you've accomplished in 1 year, but it's obviously built on many, many years of dedication and interest in education and equity, not only in this area, but in our nation. And you are a great example to the rest of us of how we can keep moving the ball down the field. It's been a tremendous year. I think we have lots of work to do in 2016. We'll look to you and your colleagues for that help. I want to say thank you as well to Principal Lyons Lucas. I want to acknowledge Dr. Libby Doggett, Shannon Rudisill, both here representing the administration from the Department of Education, Health and Human Services, and all of the folks on your team who helped with this event today and have helped with Invest in Us all year. It has been a tremendous day. Thank you for joining us, listening to these great panelists, and if you have questions for them, they are not going to run to their cars. They are going to spend a little bit of time up here at the front of the room, and I'm sure Catherine Bradley feels the same way. They're excited about their work and would love to share it with you. So thank you for being with us.